Well, as we do each and every Tuesday, we welcome on and say good morning to Dave Trabert of the Kansas Policy Institute, joining us on KCMO Talk Radio. And I want to talk about something with Dave regarding the Kansas Association of School Boards that we're going to be getting into. But first, by now, you know the story that's gotten national attention here in Kansas. Marion County Record was raided almost 2 weeks ago now. And I want to get an update from Dave on that. So, Dave, good morning. What more do we know about that story, as it's been about 10 days since that raid took place?
Well, what we know, good morning, Pete. What we know so far is the whole thing is a hot mess. You almost couldn't write a script with things going as wrong as they did in Marion County. The county attorney last week put out a notice saying, well, it doesn't seem like there was sufficient evidence for this, and had the property returned a few days after it was seized in a raid. We have a story coming today where we're not even sure that the county attorney saw the affidavit before it went to the judge to be signed. There's questions about it. We're talking to legal experts who have looked over the affidavits. This is just a mess.
Mm-hmm. So when you look at this story, I mean, I want to be sympathetic to media getting raided by law enforcement. I mean, I really do. But as I've said over the last week and a half, when the New York Times and the Kansas City Star are on the same page and pushing one side of the narrative, I'm at least willing to take a step back and say, okay, what's actually going on here? Do you think there's still pause and reason to be skeptical of that narrative, or does this genuinely look like a crackdown on a free speech media enterprise because of small town politics?
Well, you gave good reason to question the way things are being phrased right now. I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, it really does look like a massive overreach, violation of so many rights and principles. Even when you have the county attorney saying in retrospect, yeah, I guess there really wasn't any sufficient evidence for this. You have an absolute debacle of the whole, what is supposed to be an orderly process under the rule of law. But now let's talk a little bit about the New York Times and the Kansas City Star and others. There has been justifiable outrage expressed over the way this whole thing has gone down. My question is, where has that outrage been when other violations of rights have taken place? Like when the Johnson County the chairman, Mike Kelly, wants to cancel speech that he finds annoying. He lets his county manager, they pass a policy that says, yeah, if it's repetitive, annoying, you can go ahead and ignore it. When school districts say, we're not going to let the public hear what public comments are, we're going to hold that outside the meeting so that there's no recorded evidence of it taking place. When Governor Kelly tells her administration, yeah, I don't like this law, even though the legislature passed it, you go ahead and ignore it. Where is the outrage? I mean, you can't just be, if you have constitutional principles, if you're going to stand for principles, media has to vocally oppose all oversteps and not give a pass to the members of your political team when they do things inappropriately.
That's a good point. Dave Trabert, Kansas Policy Institute's on KCMO. All right, new social media video, Dave, I want to ask you about from the Kansas Association of School Boards, bragging about how great everything is. It was put out here in the last few days, and the tweet reads in part, at the Kansas Association of School Boards, we see Kansas's bright future in our public schools. This week, join our excitement as we share uplifting news from across the state, celebrating the upcoming school year. Something tells me they're not telling the whole story here. What's that?
Yeah, well, that's a nice transition from media telling the stories it wants to tell. This video, yeah, I mean, certainly some kids do have a bright future. It's not all good or bad, but the Kansas Association of School Boards consistently covers up the fact that it is not a bright future for far too many kids in Kansas because we have very low, persistently low achievement for a lot of kids. It's they tout their new report that says Kansas is now number 13 in the nation in achievement, and guess what? The only ones who do better spend a lot more money. It is just a shameless push for give us more money, give us more money. Are we getting any results? Well, we don't want to talk about that. It's a bright future. This is nonsense what they come out with. It is just it's a complete disservice to the tens of thousands of Kansas students who are doomed to not having a bright future because of the way the system ignores their needs.
So what about ACT scores? I mean, that seems to me to be the way that we can actually compare states and how good a job the public schools are doing. ACT scores. Where is Kansas when you look at the 50 states on average or median ACT scores?
If you look at the scores, you have to look at scores based on different the demographic groupings, because each state has a different demographic makeup between low income and not low income. Now, ACT doesn't break out by income levels. They give race-based breakouts, like white and black and Hispanic and so forth. If you look at those, Kansas is in the bottom third of the nation, like ranked 35, 37, and so forth. If you look at the college readiness for the state overall, only 21% of kids were considered college ready in English, reading, math, and science. The national average is 25%. That's pathetic.
Wow.
Kansas used to be a little bit above the national average, which was still low. But Kansas has fallen from 32% college ready to 21% college ready in about 10 years. It's atrocious.
And what's the best case? I mean, when the argument's made, more money, more tax dollars, we're just, if only we got this lump sum from taxpayers, whether it's at the state level or the municipal level, everything's going to be great. I mean, we're going to be off to the races here in Kansas. What's the best case against that talking point that, permeates one political party in this state and much of media as well?
Well, they say that, Pete, but there's no evidence, not a shred of evidence. Everywhere you look, states and districts that they're spending more. We're doing a new productivity analysis coming out with new census data. There are 15 states that exceeded the national average in achievement on the NAEP results, but spent a lot less than the national average adjusted for the cost of living. There's another, I think, 3 more that were at the average and still spent less. Everywhere you look. I'll give you an example. There's, if you start looking at these breakouts there, they give low income and not low income comparisons. If you look at the 8 major categories, states like Idaho spend about half what Kansas spends and gets better results.
Wow.
You look at states like Florida and Arizona that spend thousands of dollars per student less and get much better results. There is no evidence to it. Even if you look at Kansas results alone, the achievement is flat and declining over time, and the spending is through the roof. It doesn't matter, but that doesn't matter to the system. The system works to sustain the system. It's okay if kids get educated, but not if the system has to change.
Yeah.
That's what matters most to the system.
So true. Well said. Dave Trabert, Kansas Policy Institute, does great work there. Dave, we always appreciate your time here on KCMO. Thanks so much for being here.
And we appreciate you, Pete, for bringing these issues to light.
Absolutely.